Good evening and welcome. We'll start with reading the agenda. We'll go over our minutes of our last meeting on July 19th. We'll move on to community relations announcements and open forums. We have two items under appointments and resignations. Item number 1 is the Fire Station Building Committee. Item number 2 will be an appointment for a hearing officer. Under scheduled appointments, we have a 6:45 appointment with the fire chief to talk about the SAFER grants. We have a 7 o'clock appointment for an update on regional dispatch, an appointment of a regional 911 emergency communications district planning committee members from the town. Under new business, we have one item, archival storage facility, a design, bidding documents, and construction. Under old business, we have two items, Route 20 project, a long-range planning update, and a second item is appointing an alternate zoning enforcement officer official concerning the Southbridge Recycling and Disposal Park. We will then move on to committee reports, then BoS policy review, then we'll move on to the town manager's report, and then we'll go to other business that was unknown at the time of posting. Our next meeting will be August 16th. With that, we'll move to announcements. What are the board's wishes with the July 19th Selectmen's meeting minutes?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we approve the regular selectmen's meeting minutes of July 19th.
Second.
A motion and second discussion. Move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes with 3 ayes and 2 abstentions. And now we'll move on to announcements. The Charlton Fire Department would like to remind parents to keep lighters and matches high away from a child's reach. The Charlton Heritage Preservation Trust will be holding a community yard sale on Saturday, August 6th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Stop in and visit the Senior Center yard sale. Old Home Day will be celebrated on Monday, September 5th. This will be the 50th Old Home Day? Is it 5 already? 120, I'm sorry. I was like, 50 sounds kind of low. Please visit www.townofcharlton.net for more information. Does anyone else have any announcements? Is anyone here for open forum? Chief?
Through the chair. This weekend, the annual Pan Mass Challenge comes through on Saturday morning. It's always great to see all the riders raising money to combat cancer. That being said, it also places some difficulty on the residents and people commuting through the area. So they're supposed to come through around 5:45 and be out of here by 7. Generally, by 6:30, you know, the bulk of everybody, and we've negotiated. But a lot of times when we're at 20 and 169 and Stafford Street, getting across those areas very, very difficult. So I would say seek alternate routes if you're coming through that way. Either leave earlier or later or whatever, but if you're going that way, because they're going to come up out of Sturbridge, up 20, up Masonic Home Road, which is Route 31, down Main Street, down, by Bay Path on Muggett Hill Road into Oxford. So if you're commuting in those areas, be aware that you may be held up to try and get through. Because 4,000 riders on bikes, we have people that are the elites that come through and they're just gone, within a few minutes. But the people that are in the heat of the pack, it takes a while to get them all through. And then if there's any difficulties with anybody that has a flat tire or falls down or what have you. So please, I'm trying to accommodate the public by making this notice, and please be mindful that and tolerant of what we have to do with traffic that morning. And it's for, obviously, a great cause, too.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, what was the date and time again for that?
So it's this Saturday. It's the 6th, starting at 5:45 a.m. They're supposed to be leaving Sturbridge and entering Charlton at 5:45 from the host. They'll enter Charlton around 5:45. Most of them are by 6:30 through here, but they they mark their timeline, they're a little more generous, they say by 7, that they're through the town, so.
I think that's also the yard sale, and so people should also be aware, because we have a lot of people, they're rushing from house to house, and it becomes like a little derby out there. So that compounds it, so people who are planning on being out in the yard sale route should also be aware of where the pan mat.
I
Mass
believe
is-
the
isn't it-
yard sale, the times
Is
though
that-
are later. Isn't
Okay.
it, the start is like 8?
That's good then.
That's
Right,
great.
I think
Yeah,
I think we have a pretty, at least a 1-hour gap before.
It's good to
Um,
know.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think we're okay in that regards for that. So hopefully that everything will go. If anybody has any questions, they can call the police station and I'll talk to them, and we can try and accommodate somebody that needs to help map out a route or get assistance, okay?
Thank you, Chief.
Great.
Anyone else here for open forum?
So I
Seeing-
guess I will just say, for those of you who are driving in the morning, be aware that the yard sales are out there, so people may be coming around corners and finding cars that are on the side of the road in unexpected places.
Yep, so take
Earlier.
caution all day.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, Chief.
Something about Old Home Day. Through the chair again, I would like to, encourage people to come out. This is the 120th. This year, one other thing that we're doing in addition to our fireworks, so we are having fireworks, we're having more fireworks, and we're having, again, by popular demand, former Chairman Rick Swenson, Selectman Swenson with Mondo Soul, playing all the hits. And but on Sunday, at the Masonic Home, in the back, they have a large stage. Some people have gone to concerts there in the past. They constructed a large stage a few years ago, right near their tower. So on Sunday, which would be the 4th, September 4th, from 4 to 6 p.m., we're having New Bay Colony. They're from the Whitensville area. They've been around for about 35 years or so. They will be playing a lot of oldies, a lot of standards, and they're a phenomenal band. So we're having them on Sunday. So we've never done that before. We're trying to incorporate the whole weekend. So Saturday, fireworks, concert, Sunday, concert, 4 to 6, and then obviously Old Home Day with all our regular festivities going on too. And so I just want to get people thinking about, and don't forget to start searching the water holes for your biggest frog, so frog jumping.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else here for open forum? Seeing none, we will move on to appointments and resignations. Item number 1, a fire station building committee. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. One of the board's goals is to reinstate the Fire Station Building Committee. The original makeup of the committee was 1 member from the Library Building Committee, 1 member from the public involved in the building trade, and 1 member from the area fire department, 2 members from the fire department, and 2 members from the public. Also, this committee was the Chief Cloutier, Selectman Swenson, and myself. We were asked to reach out to the previous members to see if they would be interested in serving on this committee again. The following members have replied. I would ask the board to appoint those who are interested. Scott Brown, Steve Coleman, and Bud Harris are declining at this time. Joe Habler, Brian Olette, and Ralph Fisk are still interested in being appointed to the committee and continuing to serve. We have placed the openings for 1 member from the area fire department and 2 members from the public on cable and the town's website. Selectman Swenson would still like to be involved, as he stated at a previous meeting. Does the board wish to have Chief Cloutier, Selectman Swenson, and myself on the committee?
Through the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Mr. McGrath?
I believe I also mentioned I'd like to be on that committee. So if I could put my name in there.
So Ms. Craver, 2 members from the public that's appointed by our committee then?
Yes.
If we can't have 2 selectmen, could Mr. McGrath be the other member from the community?
Possibly. How long have we been advertising on television?
Over
Ms.
2
Graber?
weeks.
Over 2 weeks. Have we had anyone reach out to us?
I want to say no. What you have here is who we've had.
Okay.
So could I make a motion to have Ms. Craver and Mr. Swenson and the fire chief on the committee as they were, and also Mr. McGrath as the new community member? That way Mr. McGrath can also be on the committee, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well,
Would
way to
that
get you on there.
Yeah.
would that motion also include reappointing Joseph Habler, Brian Olet, and Ralph
Yes,
Fisk?
yes.
Personally, no problem with that. If no one else has any issues on the board, I don't think there's any concerns. And just make sure that we keep advertising it, looking for a,
So Joe
last member.
Habler would not be that's the library committee.
Yep.
So you would be doing Ralph Fisk from the building trade. And we would confirm if you are approving who's the other one then? Brian Olet. We would have the chief send something from the fire department for his 2 people too.
okay.
So from here, it basically would be you, Rick, John, the chief,
Correct.
Yep, and there'll be one opening. For
And
us.
Ralph.
and Ralph.
Just one thing,
Mr.
Chief Cloutier, do you think you might be able to assist us in getting a representative from an area fire department who might be willing to join the committee? Is that something you'd be willing to help with?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. There's a couple of new fire stations being built around in our area. Grafton is one of them that we actually went and visited, if you remember correctly. And also Leicester just received some funding for a new fire station as well. So, yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay, terrific, that'd be great.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Just
Mr.
a
Singer?
request afterwards.
Okay.
All right, we have, I was just gonna ask, because I know there's an immense amount of work that goes into this in time. So I'd like to ask if we could send just a thank you note to Scott Brown, Stephen Coleman, and Bud Harris for all the work they've done on the committee and all the time they've given.
Ms. Graver, you will take care of that?
We will. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you all for re-volunteering or volunteering anew. And before at 6:45, we will take care of item number 2 on appointments and resignations for a hearings officer. Ms. Craver? Cool.
Yes, sir. Getting pushy there here. Okay, it's come to my attention nope, not that one. Yes, it is that
Yes.
one. It has come to my attention that due to a disciplinary matter, Special Counsel has recommended that the Board of Selectmen appoint me as the hearing officer to make findings of fact and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen regarding a police disciplinary matter. Therefore, I recommend you appoint me as a hearing officer for the current employee matter in the police department. There is a recommended motion.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Swenson?
I move to appoint Robin Craver as hearing officer to make finding of fact and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen regarding a police disciplinary matter.
Second.
Thank you. A motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we will perfectly on time for our 6:45 scheduled appointment with the chief to discuss the SAFER grant. Chief? And Ms. Graver, do you want to kick us off?
Certainly. Fire Chief Cloutier is asked to meet with the board to discuss the SAFER grant that he's applied for in the amount of $1.7 million. The grant is for staffing adequate fire and emergency response personnel. Captain Knopf wrote the grant for 9 personnel back in 2015. This would provide them with a fire officer and 4 firefighters per group and a deputy chief. The grant has a performance period of 6/30/16 to 6/30/18, which is 2 years. After the period of performance, there is no obligation to maintain those positions, although some variation of such may prove beneficial. As you know, the town meeting approved 4 new personnel for the fire department. If we need to change the grant to 4 positions, Chief has told me that it would require to be rescored by the committee, and may or may not reach the threshold of scoring that they have successfully demonstrated in the grant. If the board chooses to sign the letter, and if we do receive the grant, we have 30 days to negate the grant if that's the route the board wishes.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Chief, you want, I know, sorry about last time, there was busy schedules for everyone, so if you wanted to just talk about this for a few minutes, that'd be awesome.
We had a propane fire last time I was getting ready to sit down here, so.
Is that why you don't have any eyebrows right now?
Yeah, my eyebrows are faded in, I think. So thank you for giving us a couple of minutes this evening. In early 2015, Captain Knopf did submit a grant for 9 personnel. The 9 personnel is basically to meet the minimum thresholds of NFPA standards of for a response for the town of Charlton. The 9 personnel would be giving us 5 people on a group. We have 4 groups, 5 people on a group, and then plus a deputy chief. That would give us 4 firefighters and an officer to respond. Right now, we are in, say, the pipeline, as they say. We have not been issued the grant, and we do not have confirmation that we will receive the grant. But we are in the lineup that there's a possibility that they are looking at the grant, and we have scored satisfactory to move to this point. Some people have received letters that they have not been awarded the grant or anything throughout the nation, and it's a very competitive grant as well. As you know, like Ms. Craver said, that in 2016 we were successful in obtaining 4 full-time positions, and those folks have started work as well. And so consequently, what we would be at this point now is to just at least have a conversation about the grant itself. We are looking for a letter of governance that we would need for FEMA to allow us to move forward with the grant process and go from there. If we do say we receive a letter of governance for asking for 4 personnel, the people that we have hired over the last couple of weeks through FY17, that would end up having to be rescored and then go from there. So we're kind of at that point, and I'm not really too sure exactly where to go with it. So I figured at least have the conversation and discussion and see what we want to do. I think it would be great to be able to get the 4 new personnel paid for. Obviously, that grant would be reduced by, I'm sure, an appropriate amount, maybe percentagely equal. I do not know if we would even meet the thresholds at that point. So at least it's an opportunity, and go from there.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Swenson?
That kind of leads to where I was going, Chief. My first question is, if the original grant was for 9 and we hired 4, why are we not looking for 5?
I agree. I think that would be great. I think that we could ask for all 9 through the grant is basically allowing us for the 9. We could then, submit it for 9, that the letter of governance was for 9, and we could move in that process.
Yeah, my concern, a question, not so much a concern, a question would be, is that going to set us back in the process, and are they going to look at it, whoever it is that makes this determination, look at it and say, well, they're close, they only need 4, they're not 9 away like they were, they only need 4 to get to NFPA standards. We got towns with greater need.
There may be, and I don't know. I mean, Fall River ends up putting in this grant every single year for $10 million, and they tend to get the grant every single year because it's not just a state grant. This is just like the grant where we received for the tower, our Tower 1 that Captain Knopf wrote as well, and that was $900,000 and change. But this grant is the same. It's the same FEMA grant that is there, and it's a national-wide grant, and to actually receive it, I think is, well, we haven't received it, I want to say that, but to actually be in the running at this point now is pretty amazing, actually, as far as I can tell. It's a great thing.
Just a point of clarification, the Selectman Swenson asked, since we have 4, should we be asking for 5? I believe you would, or can you clarify whether or not the 4 that you've just hired would be included in that grant or excluded in that grant as part of the 9?
I believe that the 4, if we receive the letter of governance, the 4 that we just hired now in this fiscal year would be allowed because the grant period covers from June 30, 2016 to June 30, 2018. So that's the period of performance. They fall inside of that period of performance.
So what we would get is those 4 officers
So we
paid
could use
for
grant
4
funds
years,
to
for 2
pay those
years.
4 officers for
For
2
2
years.
There is a possibility of that. I cannot guarantee it. This is the federal government we are talking about, but we are at least in the running, which is a good thing.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Singer?
Okay.
But if we lower it from 9 to 4, you're saying it also could affect our score, and maybe we don't get it because our score is higher when we asked for 9.
Correct.
So if it were left at 9, and this comes up with a couple of other questions and considerations for the future, we have gotten approval to make the 4 hires. So 2 years down the road, it doesn't make a difference. We have 4 new hires, and this, we're going to assume we're going to continue to keep those employees of the town, which is why everyone got on board that through those additional employees, we have better ability to manage schedules and overtime, and it's actually going to not cost the town what we thought. So it was a doable endeavor. These are 5 that would be paid for if we had to do 9. 5 additional firefighters that the town hadn't planned on.
Great.
So after 2 years, we now find ourselves in the uncomfortable position of either having to suddenly fire or lay off 5 employees we only hired 2 years earlier, not fair to them, or suddenly find the funding from the town's taxpayers to pay for 5 more bodies. We really
Correct.
gotta consider that. And the other part of this was, with this grant, is there a matching aspect to it? Or is all the money from the federal government or whatever the grant, so it's not like, okay, the grant gives us the, $1 million we need, town has to match 400,000, or no, town doesn't have to match anything.
This grant is not like the fire truck grant where there was a 5% match. This grant is 100% paid through FEMA.
So the only concern to the town would then would be, once the grant ends, what do we do with the people we've hired?
Correct.
Chief, a question. Is this a grant that happens every year? Do you apply every year? Is it every 2 years?
We've applied for this many times and just get the deny letter. Thank you very much. Hey, we'll see you next year, kind of letter.
Mr. Swenson?
A couple things. I think Mr. Singer brought up a couple of good points. I think another way that it could be looked at, though, is if these 4 or 5 or whatever that number is were to come on, it's a chance for them to gain a year or 2 experience in the field and maybe put them in a better position to qualify elsewhere for a job, provided they know going in that they're being paid through a grant which may or may not be available again after June of 30th of 18.
That's absolutely correct. Anyone that had experience in a full-time department rose to the top in our application process, which we received 83 applications for. Any of them that had, which only one did, had full-time academy experience, certainly rose to the top. So there was a lot of things that that 2 years experience in a full-time department as a full-time member is a very good thing to have on your resume.
Chief, that $1.7 million you said that we're aiming for in the grant, that completely covers their salary, correct?
Correct.
Does that account for any increases in insurance or any other indirect costs?
Not at this point, no.
Equipment.
Equipment costs?
Good point.
Uniforms?
Excellent point.
We have to pay for that as well, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Singer?
Just a question that Mr. Swenson actually prompted another question. If, I'm the type of person who, if we make a decision to hire people, I should know that we can employ them. We don't know that beyond 2 years. If people came in and they did, as Mr. Swenson suggests, no, there's a chance you could be let go in 2 years, and you're coming on because you want the experience anyway. Should 2 years pass and we have to lay off 3, 4, 5 employees, and they're gone, but they have their experience now, is there a liability to the town still financially
Yes.
for unemployment? For
Unemployment.
as long as it takes these people to find jobs, the town still technically owns them financially for an extended period of time.
Correct.
And that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, too, depending on how many.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is all the conversation
There's a
that I
lot of
wanted to,
there's
there's
to
a lot
think
of
about.
conversation.
So you could outfit them, spend all the money to outfit them, get them trained, they're here 2 years, they leave, and then you've got
Mr. Swenson?
unemployment.
I'm going to make a motion that the board sign the letter of governance. As the chief explained, we do have a time period. If we are awarded the grant, we do have a time period to decline it. And I think by signing the letter, we are at least letting the state or FEMA know that we do have needs. We are short-staffed and we do have needs. And then if we get to the point that we decide that equipment benefits such and such, just make it not viable, then we always have, time to say thanks, but no thanks, and go on from there. So I'm going to offer that as a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Singer?
So is the, Chief, is the 30 days from the letter and the application? Or is it 30 days from when you are told you've been awarded the grant, if you get it? You have 30 days from awarding the grant to say we don't want it, or 30 days from when we sign the letter to say, no, we changed our minds?
It's though 30 days from the award.
So however long that takes, we would have all of this time, plus if they tell you you were awarded the grant, we still have another 30 days from that point to say this isn't gonna work on our budget.
Would this prevent us, instead of attacking it for going for 4 firefighters instead of 9, this prevents us from going that route to pay for the 4 we already hired? That makes sense? So instead of changing the way we're applying for this grant, so instead of going for 9, going for the 4, by signing the letter of governance, we can't go after just the 4 firefighters for funding.
The letter of governance that I proposed goes for the entire 9, which would
Right.
include 4 that we have.
Right, so we couldn't just go after the 4 if we decide to sign this letter.
If you wanted to write the letter for 4 and change the letter itself and state that we are willing to go for 4 firefighters, then it would have to go back to the submittal committee again and be rescored.
Right.
My
Mr. McGrath?
motion is that we do it for the 9, and we try to have the 4 that we currently have covered under,
And that was
as
my
part of
second.
that 9.
And then I was just gonna add that I think if you go and start switching your request for your grant in the midst of, of them awarding grants, I think we're just gonna go down in flames. My other comment was that I think that this gives us a chance to have the chief and anybody else that he has to contact, to get a handle on what our expenses are gonna be, if we are awarded the grant, so that we have some hard and fast numbers that we can discuss with the finance committee and, all the stakeholders, so.
Chief, do you have any time frame on when, I know it's hard to ask, when we would find out if we would actually we would be receiving the grant?
I don't really know that.
Any ballpark, half a year, 2 months?
I would say that the window that we are in right at this point now would be within the next, say, 90 to 120 days. And that is a total, absolute 100% guess.
Mr. Singer?
Um,
But thank you.
As the letter of governance, basically, it doesn't necessarily commit us to anything.
Right.
I would like to offer an amendment to the motion if I can. Somebody to add to their motion that if we are awarded this grant, that the board is going to agree to meet with FinCom within 10 days of award and have a decision made within 20. So we don't find ourselves one day before we have to make a decision, trying to make a decision on this, and then the town's stuck with 5 people we may be able to hire or may not be able to hire. I think we need to have that time limit. If we get it, we agree, within 10 days, we're meeting with FinCom, 10 days or sooner, and within 20 days or sooner, we make that decision.
I would recommend maybe
21 days.
14 and 21, just because of the whole 2-week cycle.
Right, but that way, it gives us a 2-week window to meet with everybody, and another week after that to, come up with a decision.
Right. Is that a motion to amend?
Yes.
A motion to amend, or a second to the?
I'll second it.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
fine.
We're now discussing the amendment to the motion, which adds a time frame on when to meet and act upon the motion. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote for that. All in favor of the amendment to the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The amendment to the motion passes.
Thank
So now back to discussion on the newly amended motion.
So I just have one question.
Ms. Craver?
Chief, do you think that would be any issue in credibility for the town of Charlton if the Board of Selectmen requests the 9 and then they deny it, of any future liability or trying to, once our 4 people are on, if we then wanted 3 or 4 additional people to go back later on and ask for the grant again.
I think we'd be held harmless. I've never really heard of that actually happening. But I can certainly ask Dave Parr, our grants person, that question. I can definitely ask that question.
We have to receive the award first.
Right.
But,
Any more discussion from the board? Any more discussion from out there? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Chief, and, there's one note. When we were going through town meeting, discussing the 4 firefighters, me personally, I did not know about this grant going out, and I don't think other members of the board knew about this as well. So just including us in the loop, because, this is involving something that's we're directly fighting for, a significant change to the way we operate and the personnel that we have. Just keeping us, knowing that, hey, we're also looking at this 9 firefighter thing. And as you said, that this happens every year. It's just good to just make sure we're in the loop. Mr. Singer?
Not just in how we operate, but there's financial repercussions to the town and our budget.
Of course.
Yeah.
So.
No,
But thank you so much, and thank you, Captain Knopf, for
Yeah, I'd
your
also
work
like
on
to
this.
thank
So, yeah, absolutely.
Captain
There's a lot
Knopf
of
for his work.
goes
Yeah.
into that stuff.
We put a lot of grants in every single,
Right.
I mean, we write grants all the time. And just to let you know that we will be writing grants for quite a long time to try to pursue equipment and personnel. I mean, it's just a huge component of what we can do.
Right.
And it enhances our service to the community. It's not for us, it's for the community.
course.
And that's what we do it for, So I thank you for that. I did notice, and so I didn't notice on the agenda about Assistant Chief Mahan. We missed that?
We did,
Okay.
it didn't come in before Thursday, I don't think,
I'm
so she
sorry.
probably has it on the next one, but if you'd like to go for it, go for it,
Is that okay?
yes.
I didn't
Oh,
want to
I'm
mess up
sorry.
the agenda.
It's just, it's a resignation, it's only accepting a resignation, and you're the appointing authority, so all you're really doing is notifying them. Basically.
First, does anyone on the board have any objections?
And I want to do something out of order, so that's why I asked
We
Right.
don't
the preliminary
ever like to
question.
see someone leave,
True.
but we're not gonna stop someone.
I was gonna say, if we don't accept it, if we don't acknowledge it, and trust it, can he not leave?
Hey, guess what, we can't leave now.
Well, that's to do with staffing, so I think it's an important component to, we are talking about staffing tonight, so I think it would be an important component. Assistant Chief Mahan is leaving after 38 years of serving the community. I think it's a great thing for him. He's young enough where he can get out and really enjoy, a fruitful career. He's enjoyed a fruitful career and a good retirement, which is great. Our thought process is basically to move forward with accepting his resignation, which I have. His last day is September 1st, is his very last day shift at the fire station. We will have a open house from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock. I would welcome to you all to come down to. We'd love to see you there.
What is the date?
September 1st. And he will be at the station that day. He will be working his last shift there in that daytime period. Being that we just went through an entire hiring process, I would like to just take somebody off of that hiring process and fill Assistant Chief Mahan's shoes when he is retired out and open up that position.
Mr. Swenson?
In addition to that process, will you be looking to make it a promotion to another assistant chief, put someone else into Assistant Chief Mahan's position?
There is,
Is that a matter for executive session, or?
no, it's not. There will be,
I'm not asking names
yes,
for
there will
anything
be
that.
something happening in that
Okay.
area, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And just going back to the SAFER grant, one thing that I was thinking of, Chief, if you could just give us a rough idea on the positions you think that are gonna open up for retirement,
Certainly.
that'd be a great, thing for us to see, how everything works out.
Right. Also, and Chief, another question with the Safer Grant, thank you for bringing that back up. If someone retires during those 2 years, are we obligated to keep the staffing at the same level, or we keep those 9 new personnel?
You're obligated to maintain the 9 personnel through no layoffs.
Okay. So the nine level would be the total number of firefighters then?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Singer?
Just a request from the chief or Ms. Craver. I can be forgetful. If you could send an email maybe a day or two before reminding us about the first,
Certainly.
and if we could get a certificate made up for Assistant Chief Mahan, thanking him for all of his service to the town. Do you know where is he going somewhere, what his plan is?
He likes to travel, so he's probably gonna, him and his wife are probably gonna travel a little bit and enjoy that. So I don't believe, he is going to stay in the EMS world. He does have his, what they call EMT assistant, which is like it's in between paramedic and basic. So consequently, he's gonna be working for a private company just to work for them, just to keep himself out of the house. I'm not sure if that's driven by him or his wife, I'm not really sure.
Mutual agreement.
Yes.
That's the way it works at my
But
house.
they're great people, and there's not many words I can say about how much he's done for the department and the town, so.
So I'll entertain a motion from the board then?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the resignation with regret.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? I think we all.
I'm gonna relate a very short story
Actually,
if
it's,
I can.
you don't need to make that a motion because the
He has the
chief
appointment
is,
authority.
but what you do need to do is give him the authority
Fine.
to go ahead and replace
take
the
it back.
position.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
you just have
still,
to-
I'm still gonna tell my very short story
Please, Mr.
regardless if I can do that. I had the honor of speaking at second son Mahan's Eagle Scout
Ryan, yes.
ceremony. And the older son, Keenan, thank you, had worked with Matt, my son Matt, at least one summer, maybe 2 summers in the highway department in their summer
Yes.
program. So we got to know him a little bit, and we were talking to him, and he was asking how my son Matt was doing, and I will admit I'm very proud of my son. He's doing very well, and I was explaining what he was doing and what was going on. And I asked Keenan what he was gonna be doing, and he said, well, I'm gonna be going back to school. I said, oh, terrific. What are you gonna study? He says, well, I'm going to medical school. I said, that's great. Where are you going? Harvard. I'm like, well, okay. Everything I said in the last 5 minutes, never mind.
He was a valedictorian years ago when
he
he
was,
graduated, and
yeah.
they're very bright kids.
So they are a good family and
Excellent
great
family.
kids, and we do thank him for all his service to the town.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing that.
It was,
That's a good story. So what are the wishes of the board then, authorizing the chief to fill that position?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a
It's
second.
a valid motion.
you're gonna be taking a motion whether you want it or not.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes.
And
Thank
just
you,
a
chief.
point of personal privilege, I must say thank you to all of you for all of the things that you've been doing for us for the last many years, and you guys have really helped us out and really stepped up an awful lot for us lately, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart, I really do. So, thank you very much, I
Thank you,
appreciate
chief.
it.
Thanks,
And we wouldn't step up the bat if you guys didn't, keep hitting it out of the park, so.
Thank you.
Are you suggesting he take Big Poppy's place?
I wasn't gonna
Well,
say
the chief
it.
is still here. I don't know if he's leaving yet.
Oh,
The
so
next thing.
we'll move over to our second scheduled appointment on 7 o'clock for an update on a regional dispatch and appointment. Ms. Kramer?
Yes, sir. He looked like he was heading quickly out that door. Yes, sir. 4 towns met on Wednesday, July 27th, at the Oxford Town Hall and interviewed 2 vendors for the design of a public safety telecommunications system serving multiple towns and/or multiple agency dispatch centers to assist in the creation and operation of a central regional emergency communication center for participating towns of Southbridge, Charlton, Oxford, and Sturbridge. The committee voted to recommend CTC Incorporated to do the study. In reviewing Mass General Law, Chapter 6A, Section 180, Regional 911 Emergency Communication District, you are asked to form a Regional 911 Emergency Communication District Planning Committee, consisting of 3 unpaid persons whose duty shall be to study the feasibility of establishing and constructing a Regional 911 Emergency Communication District and propose the district's organization, governance, structure, operation, location, estimate of construction or siting, and operating costs, maintenance, and sums to be compensated to the Methods of financing. Each municipality comprising of the district planning committee may appropriate sums to compensate the committee's expenses. The district planning committee may expend any sum so appropriated and may employ any expert assistance as it considers necessary to carry out sections of 18O and 18V inclusive. The district planning committee may apply for and accept and expend without appropriation gifts or grants of funds from federal government, the Commonwealth, or any other source. I would ask the board to appoint Fire Chief Cloutier, Police Chief Purvier, and myself to the Regional 911 Emergency Communication District Planning Committee from Charlton. That's the end of the memo. I just also want to add that we have been acting that way up until this point. As you know, you have had us working with the other 3 towns to form a regional dispatch, to look at the feasibility of that. It's just come to our attention that we need more of a formal vote to actually get that committee up and running, and now that we do have the $85,000 grant for feasibility, some structure to that.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Craver.
Chairman,
Mr. Swenson?
I move that we appoint Town Administrator Craver, Fire Chief Cloutier, and Police Chief Purvier to the Regional 911 Emergency Communication District Planning Committee as representatives from Charlton.
Thank you. And a motion and a second? Motion and second discussion. Mr. Craver, will there be, is that just typical to have the both chiefs and the town administrator from all 4 towns? Is that?
Yes, and that will be the 3.
Yep.
And for the most part, if we go forward with this, the governance also probably will mirror that, having an operations committee, which will be all the chiefs, and then an executive, which will be all the managers, administrators.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Wait.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, we're finished with scheduled appointments. We will move on to new business. And that item is archival storage facility, a design, bidding documents, and construction. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. During the RFP process for the elevator project, quotes were received for design, bidding, documents, and construction administration for the proposed archival storage facility to be located here at the Town Hall. The Municipal Building Committee met on Thursday, July 14th, and voted to recommend that the Town of Charlton enter into a contract with Van Voris Associates for design, bidding, documents, and contract and construction administration for the proposed archival storage facility in the amount of $24,000. There is a suggested motion here. I will just also add that these associates were our architects for the building. When we had bid that out, originally we had also made room for him to be able to take on new additional pieces.
And Mr. McGrath can testify that very, very professional, very good job.
He's very good. Charlie keeps the pressure on the contractor and the subcontractors nicely, in a fair and equitable way. And make sure that we get what we paid for and that the contractor responds to questions or problems that we have, so,
And designs nice things too.
yes, he does.
So what are the wishes of the board then?
Question?
Yeah, Mr. Singer?
It says outside of Town Hall?
Yes, so it would be going in the back section over there.
The conceptual design is, if I may,
Please, Ms. Craver.
the conceptual design is to have a standalone building. The recommendations for archival storage has been not to, when you have an older building, not to put it within the building because it's cost prohibitive for what you would have to do to make that actually fireproof in case the building burnt. So because we have this unusual kind of shape, we actually have room right in the middle to put something.
Yeah, it's easier to put a concrete wall outside than putting one inside a wooden structure.
It's actually cheaper.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Cooper?
I was just wondering, when this went out to bid, is this funding from the building construction that's already been happening, or is there another source of funding?
Okay, so I want to clear up a piece about, it didn't go actual out to bid. When we went out to bid for the elevator and that larger project, we actually had language in there that that architect would be able to continue. So what we did as far as bidding was to ask him to give us a proposal that the committee actually went through. the monies for this is coming out of, we have I believe it's $250,000 that was appropriated at town meeting for this purpose. So that's the monies that this is coming from.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I move that the town administrator be authorized to enter into the contract with Charles Van Boris of, this is a little-
Derland.
Yeah, I'm reading it. and I-
Derland Van Boris.
Yeah, it's with
Sorry about
Van
that.
Boris, Charles Van Boris, not Charlton Van.
I think we have a typo.
Derland Van Boris Architects, Inc., in the amount of $24,000 for design construction documents, bidding and contract administration, and contract administration for record storage addition to the town hall, approximately 700 square feet in size, as outlined in the proposal dated June 28th, 2016.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Cooper.
The letter from Mr. Van Boris states that the space may not comply with all the performance standards of the Secretary of State that they recommend. And I'm just wondering where they fall short. Is it dimensions or is it something else?
Mr. McGrath.
We're planning on doing a masonry building, which will be, I believe, a 4-hour fire rating on it. The Secretary of State has a 6-hour fire rating, but that rating is for, if you put, as Kurt explains it, a building in a building. In other words, if we were to make the record storage building inside this building, it would have to be for a 6-hour fire rating because you have a wooden structure around it. Kurt said, looking at the building standards that fall for buildings outside, which the Secretary of State doesn't take into account for. The Secretary of State made it just for, it's as if you're doing it inside a building. So Kurt said, 4-hour fire rating would be fine for outside. That hits the building code.
Good question. Mr. Swanson?
I'm just curious if the town clerk is involved in this process, in the design, and getting her input as keeper of the records to make sure that she has input as to the.
And that's a good question. I'll ask Kurt to make sure that she is involved in it, and for ease of access also.
I do
Fair.
plan on, at the department head meeting, as we're moving forward, to let the department heads know that we're doing this, and possibly, talking with the building committee about having the departments come in. My guess is that part of this storage may have a component where we'll be looking at how much storage we need, and we'll have conversations with them.
Thank you.
Mr. Singer?
So, I know we have a lot of records, as we just
A lot.
referenced, yeah, a lot, in the clerk's office, and we just could have had an even bigger disaster recently with the flooding, could have been worse than it was. However, also in this building, we have some very important historical documents. Will we be able to also put them in there?
I think, if I may,
Ms.
There
Graves?
I think the building committee is trying to do a 20-year plan or a longer-term period plan, not just for what our immediate needs are, but I think we're looking at what are our needs of the future.
Yeah, I think it would be great to get those records, but also all those historical documents into that.
I would pass on that bit of advice to the architect and the building committee. I think that's a really good idea to think about incorporating that.
Right, and talk to the historical
I was
commission
just
about
gonna
what
say
they
the
have.
historical commission needs to
Right,
be.
what they
Yeah.
have, because I don't think they need 700 square feet, but they definitely have some documents that you don't want to lose in floods or fires, irreplaceable
Right.
documents.
So, very good point, Mr. Singer. Any other?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Cooper?
I am definitely in favor of having a storage facility, but I am very concerned that it doesn't meet the guidelines recommended. Yeah, there's a difference between 4 hours and 6 hours, and with new construction, I would think it would be possible to create a structure that would meet the recommended guidelines. Is there some way of adjusting what's being done so that they would?
Through the chair, there has been no design work done yet, so we can obviously direct the architect to give us the difference of you know, what it would cost, you know, to do it at 6 hours, and what it would cost to do it at 4 hours, and
Is
what
it-
the difference is in the construction.
Yeah, I know, is it just the difference in thickness of the masonry, is it something else, I don't know.
My own feeling would be, it would be the roof line, okay? So in other words, instead of doing a steel bar joist
corrugated.
roof with a built-up roof on top of that, it would probably be a cement cap roof. That would probably be the rate.
So it'd be interesting to find out, is it a $10,000 difference or a $1,000 difference? It'd be interesting to find out.
It's gonna be more than that.
It's a government building, it's not gonna be it's not gonna be $1,000.
What you're talking about with doing a cement cap is now you're starting to add columns inside.
A lot of weight to
A
support.
lot of weight that you have to disperse, so that's the difference. And he'll give us a price breakdown.
Right, so the fire, basically, if it was to be a fire in this building, it would have to burn through here and then even jump to that before it could even get to that building,
Correct.
which is why the 4 hours, because by the time, hopefully the fire department's here fighting this fire before it even has a chance to jump.
Correct,
And it
and
might be a happy medium in between there. I'm not a building contractor, but
right, and
That's
just
the
to
way to at
echo,
least explore it.
and echo what Mr. McGrath said earlier, you know, the specifications are for a room inside a structure already. So this would be a standalone. They wouldn't basically be inside of an unlit bonfire. So, any other?
well said.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And now we'll move on to old business. The Route 20 project, a long-range planning update. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. I had a discussion with Mary Ellen Blunt of the Massachusetts Transportation Program Manager. She stated that in an amendment to the current long-range transportation plan is currently out for a 30-day public review with a vote planned for August 3rd at the CMMPO meeting at 4:30. They have not yet been requested to place the project onto the TIP program this year, but from the timeline below, the project is likely to be started in 2019 or 2020. The original dates were 26 and 30. Currently listed as two projects, Auburn-Oxford, which was going to be 2021 to through 25, and the Oxford-Charlton was 26 through 30. Supposedly, at this point, they will be listed as one project, and you can see the amounts. The 2016 to 20 band, $5,624,320 statewide funding. From 2021 to 25 band, $11,386,727 from the STP target funding, and 2021 through 25 band, $39,922,592 statewide funding. It would be helpful to move this along by the board if the Board of Selectmen were to send a supporting letter. What are the board's wishes? And I also know that Mr. McGrath may have some more additional information.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Mr. McGrath?
Robin had asked me if I could just poke around at D3 and see what I could find out. And I actually did talk with some of the people in the planning department. They said that, and they're echoing the same thing that we see here. They don't think that the project is gonna start at that exact date because of the amount of land takings that have to take place. But they also don't think it's gonna take as long as stated here. They are gonna list it as one project, and they are just breaking out the money in 3 separate phases, just so that they don't affect other projects that are going on. It's in no way to delay the project or to spread it out. It is a very, very high priority, per the highway administrator and per the Secretary of Transportation, so.
Thank you. And to echo what Ms. Craver said, what are the wishes of the board?
Maybe we could send a letter with a request that they start on the Charlton side and work their way down to Auburn, since they've already made quite the mess of it in Auburn anyway.
Is that a motion?
No. Although I would
support?
Without necessarily having to ask them to start the draw.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Discussion? Ms. Craver, did you have something?
I just wanted to add that we really do have our representatives to thank when the tragedy happened on Route 20. We had residents, we had our state representatives. You all, really stepped up to the plate and asked and pretty much demanded from the state that this safety hazard be addressed. And it has been addressed in the short term, but I think it also brought to light the whole area, and I think that it's helped it. I also think that we owe a thank you to Lisa Broder and her activism on bringing towards the light that we really needed attention in this area. So I appreciate that the Department of Transportation is promoting this, and we have a lot of people to thank for it. It was not supposed to be this soon, so we appreciate the assistance.
And it's nice that they're listening.
Yes.
So, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. So then we'll move on to our second item under old business, an alternate zoning enforcement official. Ms. Craver?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recuse myself.
Ms. Cooper, thank you. Ms. Cooper recuses herself at 7:28.
Mr. Chairman, the zoning enforcement officer, Curtis Meskis, has received a zoning complaint in regards to the Southbridge Recycling and Disposal Park. Mr. Meskis contacted the State Ethics Commission as he would be in conflict with this complaint, as he is an abutter to the area in concerned, and the State Ethics Commission advised him to refrain from any discussions or decisions on this matter. The Board of Selectmen will need to appoint an alternate zoning enforcement officer who can address the zoning complaint and issues arising thereof from the Southbridge Recycling and Disposal Park, otherwise known as Casella Landfill. You are asked to appoint Fred Leonardo, the building commissioner from the town of Lexington, to address this issue. And before I go to my last piece in my memo, I do want to say a thank you to the town manager in Lexington, because this will be sharing. We won't have to pay additional, and they're happy to help us out at this time. I also have received emails from residents on H Foot Road with concerns relating to their water, and they have been informed that this item is on the board's agenda, and they were encouraged to attend if they wanted to.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the board? Mr.
Was
Singer?
there anyone that was coming to talk on this? Because I did notice there's a letter here that said people may be here to ask questions.
Did you want to say anything?
If you have questions, I'd certainly answer them.
Oh, sure. If you want to have a seat up here, just in case.
State your name and where you're from.
Wanted to ask.
Oh, okay.
There was a note in here about someone will be there to ask questions.
Oh, okay.
So I
Oh,
thought someone was coming specifically to
No.
ask questions.
no.
No, I talked to
We
Rob
just
prior.
always put, the backup documentation and emails that we had back and forth.
Unless someone bursts in, or unless, does anyone here have any questions?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we appoint Fred Leonardo, the building commissioner from town of Lexington, as our
Alternate.
alternate zoning enforcement officer.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Any discussion from anyone? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion passes with 4 ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we will move on to the town administrator's report, unless anyone has any committee reports. Didn't think so. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Blueberry Festival. On Saturday, July 23rd, the Charlton Arts and Activities Council held their annual Blueberry Festival. I was asked to be a judge for the Blueberry Pie Contest. It was a great event, and the pies were nothing but amazing, and there were more than just pies. There were many activities going on and many people in attendance despite the heat. So I think it was one of the better, more things of the job. So I appreciate
As
them,
a-
and they did a really good job.
As a judge, what do you look for in the perfect blueberry pie?
How
Cash.
much the... he say gas? Or cash?
Cash money. That's called fiber.
Yes. Oh, this one tastes very rich.
It's, well, it was not, I do want to say, it's not only pies, they had cheesecake and pound cakes and crumb cakes and many, and they also, just for a promotion for next year, they do them in age categories. So there's younger, and we had a
Start with
lot
the
of
older
young
pies.
people.
And then they work their way to finish with the younger pies.
We had a lot of youths who baked and submitted, and that was great. So what I look for is, if it's got an explosion of blueberry, it usually gets some extra marks, and presentation also. Is
Interesting.
something.
That's how neatly the bill is folded on top.
Yeah. So if you fold it, if you roll $100 bill into a little crane, you get extra points.
Again, the money origami, bonus points.
So, everyone, if you do, please take note. I'm sorry, Ms. Graber.
You digress. The cell tower. As you know, we put out an RFP for a replacement tower at the police station. We had 2 bids that are in, and we're in the process of checking references and comparing the bids. We expect to bring you a recommendation to your next meeting. Also, regarding grants, as you know, there is an earmark of $200,000 for the Charlton in the state budget and I met with DEP and the water interim controller to facilitate the transfer of funds. We expect a contract to be forwarded shortly. Again, we have Senator Goldby and Representatives Durant and Frost to thank for this assistance. Also, regarding the $50,000 grant for stormwater, I'm finishing up on that, and soon we should have some good training videos for our departments.
Okay.
Regarding Vadar, just want to let you know that we've been having some technical and software issues with Vadar and our accounting system. Micronet will be bringing in and installing a standalone terminal in order to reduce some of this interference. So we're trying to stay on top of that and be proactive. As you know, cyber, vandalism is rampant. So we're trying to make sure we stay with that. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Is there any questions, comments, concerns, the town administrator? Thank you very much. Any other business? Unknown time of posting. Any business? Announcements? Bad jokes? Seeing none, our next meeting will be August 16th, and we'll be entering executive session. We'll be exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Ms. McGrath, I think you are getting ready for the motion?
I am. I make a motion that we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than the professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaint or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. And number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on negotiating position of the public body, specifically for union negotiations involving the fire department, and to approve to review prior executive session minutes.
Ah,
Second.
thank you. Beautiful motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? None, but the chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And we'll move to a roll call vote. Mr. McGrath.
Aye.
Ms. Cooper.
Aye.
Mr. Swenson.
Aye.
Mr. Singer.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in executive session. It'll be exiting solely for the purpose of adjournment. Once again, our next regular selections meeting will be on August 16th. With that, have a good night.